Okay, so let's officially start this, shall we? So, hello there. My name is Honest Dan, and we are today going to be having a look at how we can use Playfab, which is part of the Microsoft Game Stack, and we're going to be using that as a means for us to store user information on our players. And that opens up a door of loads of possibilities for you in terms of how you can kind of add into your game. You can either add things that will change the way that the game works. You can just add telemetry, which is a word for tracking information about how your players play the game and interact with the game. Or you can even do things that will incentivize players to play the game more, such as like a leaderboard. And that's what we're going to be looking at adding in tomorrow as well. So this is a sponsored stream by Microsoft Azure as well. So you can find out more about the other services that kind of come as part of Playfab, or just all of the different parts of the Microsoft Game Stack. If you click on that link there, you should get a little bit of information about how to get started with Unreal. And then there's a separate link which will give you all the information about the different parts of the Microsoft Game Stack. That includes development in Visual Studio, like we did a session a couple of months ago on how to use Visual Studio to code for Unreal Engine, right? But yeah, we're going to be focusing on Playfab primarily. So the reason I chose then to do leaderboards as my kind of objective of these two streams that I'm going to be doing is because with the Global Game Jam coming up, so in January, I think it's January 20th to 30th is the window for the Global Game Jam. Because of that, I thought it was a great excuse for us to look at how can you actually get leaderboards working in your game, because it's an amazing way for you to get players playing your game and competing with other players. And that's one of the trickiest things to do sometimes in a game jam, is to get people playing your game. You spend a long time working on it, lots of blood, sweat, and maybe not enough sleep goes into it. And then you want to get people playing it. You want to know whether they enjoyed it. You want them to check out your creative outlet or your art. And having things like a leaderboard is a great way to let players see that there's other people playing it. It makes them want to play again so they can do better and try and have bragging rights through being at the top of the leaderboard, for example. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have a look into this. And Playfab that's one of the elements you can kind of get out of that. So we are going to start by just having a look about what is Playfab. I'll drop a link in chat for you now if you want to read more information about it. I'll just have a little check up on chat as well before we continue. So it's good to have everyone here, by the way. So the Playfab feature list at the moment. Yeah, so to be honest, partly there's a massive amount of it. All the core features are free. There's kind of caps on how many kind of concurrent users. I think you can have like 100,000 users in the free tier. But for most people who aren't like a big profitable indie game or a AAA studio, that's probably going to be enough. So it's definitely enough for you to get an idea of what it provides to you. And then if you're over that amount of players or you run out of requests, you're probably in a position where you can afford to pay for a service like that then. Hello there, Fletcher, as well. Nice to see you as well. Fletcher saying you can have leaderboards to make people play your game, or you can lock them all in a building and let them out once they've played and rated. That's another way, but a little bit less friendly, I would argue, right? One of these days, Creative Steve says that they're going to make a full game for a game jam. It would be nice to see you. Feel free to take part in my upcoming game jam. It'd be nice to see. But Artifacts, lovely to have you here as well. Okay, so there's a link in chat saying what is Playfab, but I guess I'll open it on screen for you so people can see. Let me just get my windows sorted at the moment. Where are we? This one over here. Okay, so I'm not going to read this through, but just so you know that there is information, you can have a look through it. But well, I know actually partly like Sea of Thieves uses Playfab, and so you can imagine for a game of a larger scale, I mean, 2,000 a month is probably nothing. So yeah, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But so Playfab, I'll be upfront. Playfab has always been one of those things where I knew it existed, but I didn't quite know what it was, if I'm honest with you. So I've tried looking at it to get a bit of a grasp, and once I've actually used it a bit, it's really not too confusing at all. I'm someone who I've done a little bit of web dev, but it can be a little bit confusing when you start hearing these big kind of jargony web technology or kind of cloud computing terms that if you're not fully familiar with them or you're not working with them, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But effectively, how I'd explain it is to think of it as it's a way to create an online account for your players. And that can be, they can either make a new account or it can use things like Steam, Windows, Xbox, iOS, Android. You can sign in using their kind of authentication systems and make a Playfab account for your player. They don't need to know that it's a Playfab account if you're using those different systems. But if you want, you can just, like what we're going to do today, is we're going to just make it so you sign up with an email address and a password, and it'll make a Playfab account for you. And you can use that then to log into to the game effectively. But so yeah, think of it as a way to create an online like user account for your players, and then that can be used for a series of things like storing analytical data. How many times have they started the game? How many levels have they beaten in my game? So that's kind of like telemetry data, the bits of information that you don't share with the player. They don't need to know. It's more of so you can analyze, oh, how's my game doing? Is this gonna, maybe level 2 is too hard because most people quit on level 2. You can also do things like how long has a player been on each level for? So when they quit the game, you might send off some telemetry data saying, okay, the level they quit on was this, the amount of time they'd spent on the level was this. And you can use that data then to try and analyze it to understand how people are interacting with your game. Other things you can do is you can add kind of data to the player that isn't just on a Playfab account, but it can interact with your game. So an example of this is you could give an in-game currency. This isn't a in-app purchases currency. You can do that. It does support in-app purchases as well. But I'm talking about an in-game currency where, let's say on like mobile games you may have played before, you get 100 coins every time you log in once a day. You could manage stuff like that. You could manage that all authoritatively on the Playfab kind of back end side of things. Meaning that people can't exploit that. It'll only do it once a day on the server, whereas if people are trying to reset their phone dates to exploit the one-day nature of it, it's not going to have any effect because the server is authoritative over that. So that's one other thing you could do with it. And another thing that we're going to be looking at tomorrow then in our next stream is going to be the leaderboards. So every time they finish a level, you can submit their score. And then you can take their username and you can put that in a leaderboard, and then you can have a screen where you say, okay, show me the current leaderboard, and it'll pull all the information at the top, however many you want people out of that leaderboard, and you can display it however you want to do then as well. So the way to think about it is it's like a big kind of database that is managed by Playfab. You don't have to pay for the server costs or anything along those lines. And then in Unreal or whatever game engine you're using, you can then access its API. And if you're not familiar with the term API, that basically means you can ask it certain questions to say, hey, can you give me this information? Or you can say, hey, this player has just changed their highest score. Can you update the server? So it allows you to interact with that data that you're storing from different places, such as an Android game, or such as a game you've made in Unreal Engine that's on the Xbox Live Marketplace, for example, or the Windows Store, sorry. Okay, so that's how I see it. There's extra things that you have with Playfab that I haven't talked about yet as well. And one of the things I want people to remember is today we're going to be logging in with a manual email address, but if you're using things like Steam for your game, it can just use that Steam authentication in order to create and log them in. So it makes it more seamless, because we're going to have a login screen where you've got to type in credentials, but that's not always going to be the case. So keep that in mind. But also Playfab is pretty much a backend, as I've mentioned before. Backend meaning it manages data that players don't have to see or know about, right? It's the same with web pages. Web pages is two parts of it. You have the front end, which is the website you actually see, and then the back end is where all of the kind of logic that controls what happens when website users click on different things, or submit an order on Amazon. It needs to process that data. That's what we call the back end. And so Playfab as a back end in this instance for game development is those kind of server-side things that are running in the background that the player doesn't actually know about, but it's important it happens to control certain things. But Playfab also does scalable multiplayer kind of servers as well, along with matchmaking, voice over IP stuff. You can make parties and the likes. So yeah, it's a pretty robust thing. It depends what you need to do with it. So hopefully that giving you an idea of what Playfab is. It's just this online account that it makes via Playfab, and then using those user accounts that you've made for your players, you have access to a wealth of kind of tools that you can use to enhance your game or even analyze your game and try and improve it. Partly a question: do we need to add a GDPR compliant privacy policy when using Playfab? If your players are going to be playing in Europe, yes, you would need to. Okay. Littlewood was saying they used to have two 40-inch screens showing the Playfab stats in the barn that I worked on. Yeah, so you'd be able to see like how many players you've got and like monitor statistics. It has quite a nice interface. We'll have a look at that in a short amount of time. But yeah, it's pretty cool, and I can imagine it would be really interesting to look with real data. Today we're going to have some fake users, which is me, but still, it looks like something to be super useful for a lot of games. So now that we've got a little bit of an idea about what Playfab is, it is worth talking about the pricing thing, because Partly mentioned that earlier as well. I think I've got the page open somewhere. Yes, I've got a link to it here. So you're welcome to look at it yourself if you want. I'll drop the link in the chat. And keep in mind, this is all free. I'm not, as much as this is a sponsored stream, I'm not trying to make people spend money on this. I just want people to know about that there is fees involved if your game gets huge. But generally, it's free for most of the core features. And I think for most people in our networks as developers making indie games, jam games, it's not going to cost you a thing, especially if you're doing a game jam, like we said, with a global game jam. If you can work out how to do this for a project now, that means when you get to doing your next game jam that's coming up, you're able to just kind of use this code that you've made now, chuck it into your game, and then you don't have to spend all day working up a specialized kind of leaderboard system. You can just reuse this code that you've done before. Okay. So, Partly, if you had 42,000 concurrent players, would you mind that? No, that wouldn't be too bad for you, I'd imagine, huh? Anyway, okay. So, yeah, there's information. I'm not going to run through it all, but pretty much all of the core features are included, and you get to try it all out without having to pay for anything. So yeah, that's good. And that's one of the reasons I thought this was a cool topic to cover, because I think when you're starting off in game dev, anything that costs money is a barrier to getting into it. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's get started then. So we're going to be going over today. The idea is we got two elements of it. We need to make our Playfab account. That's going to give us a dashboard where we can create games. And then we're going to create a project in Unreal. We're going to make a login interface. And then we're going to use Playfab. We're going to, as well, it's not use Playfab. Let me rephrase that. We're going to use the Playfab plugin in Unreal, which lets you easily make API calls to Playfab officially, so that you can say, hey, someone's trying to sign up. You can send them the username, the email, the password, and then Playfab receives that and goes, okay, what game is it? Okay, here's their details. Does it pass the minimum requirements for password, etc.? If it does, great, we'll add them. And then it'll send a message back to your game and say, hey, you're done. They've got an account. They're fine to play. And then you can use that user detail that you've got then in order to do other things and interact with Playfab during the game session. Yeah, good, Partly. Well, let me know. Let me know if you do. It'd be nice to have someone else who's using Playfab so that we can talk about different things that we try out in it and what successes we have with it. Okay, so let's see. The first thing that you'll want to be doing then is let's open up the Epic Games installer. So I'm assuming that you've got Unreal Engine and you know a bit about Unreal already. So I'm not going to be talking through Unreal as if it's your very first time, but I will be going step by step so you can copy along if it's your first time. We need to get a plugin. So a plugin in Unreal is essentially a small contained isolated library of code that you can download that someone else has made, and you can just add it to any project, and then you can use the functions that someone has made in that. So there's a plugin I've got for helping you do like animations, for example, a bunch of helper tools for that. This is just one that's going to make it much easier for us to connect to Playfab. And it takes care of all the web kind of socket and kind of HTTP. No, it may not be socket, sorry. It takes care of all of your HTTP requests and all that kind of web stuff that you need to do otherwise. And you just call a function that says register new user, and behind the scenes it does everything for you. So first thing then, we'll go to the marketplace. This is where you will find your plugins. And then if you scroll down, and we're going to just search in the search box here, if you type in Playfab, you're looking for one called the Playfab SDK. So Playfab SDK, that is going to be probably around 1 gigabyte it adds to your project. It might take a little bit of time to download based on your internet connection, but once you've downloaded it, you're good to get started. So once you've got that, the next thing you'll need to do is make sure that you've added it to your engine version. So in Unreal, if we go into our library, it'll show us the different versions of the engine that we've got installed. If you're kind of new to Unreal, you might only have one version. That's not a problem. But if you're working on multiple projects, you might have different versions of the engine to support those. So what you'd want to do is make sure that the plugin is kind of installed for that version of the engine. So we're going to be using the most latest version of Unreal Engine 4, which is 4.271. So what you'd do in this is you would just go, you can go and install plugins here. It'll give you your list of plugins which are currently installed. I've already installed it, as you can see here. But if not, the way that you'd go ahead and do it then is if I go back to down here into my vault and I search for Playfab, because I've now got it, there's this thing, install to engine. So you could click on install engine, and then you can see these two versions of the engines I haven't installed it for. So if you needed to do it for 27.1, it would show up in this list. You click it and it would install it for you. So make sure you've done that step as well. You should have a little progress bar with that. Again, it can take a little bit of time to do, but once you've got it done, you don't need to do it again then, whilst you're still using that version of the engine at least. Okay, cool. So that is installed to that. So we're going to go ahead and start a new 4.271 version Unreal project. And we'll just use one of their templates to get started. While this is loading up, we'll say hi to chat as well. Hello there, Halsey. Nice to have you in chat. It is. I told you it was a gig. Partly, it's a decent chunk. That's not going to go well for your tiny package games, is it? Okay, so over here, if you're starting a new project, we're just going to click on games, and then we can start with our first person project. It doesn't particularly matter. You might already have a game, by the way. So if you've got a game already that you're trying to add this to, you can just make sure that Playfab is installed for the version of the engine you're using for your game, and then open your game. But we're just assuming you haven't got a project at the moment. So we'll go on first person. We're going to make a blueprint only project. You can do code if you want, but these two streams are going to be focused on blueprint to keep it straightforward. And I'm just going to call this, let's just call this my Playfab project. Okay, so let's create that project. So before we get started, if you remember, I said there's two parts to this. We need a Playfab account, and then we need an Unreal project that we're going to be doing our code in. So before we start doing any code or thinking about our game, let's go ahead and get a Playfab account set up. So let me get a link to drop for people in chat. I've got a page here already for Playfab, but if we just get this developerplayfab.com. Hey, Killblock. Okay, so that link there, if you were to go to that, it will take you to the main page where you would need to sign up. So let me just show you that in a new browser so you can see what you would see. Okay, so you come to this page, you would just need to sign up yourself. So email address, password, and confirm your password, create free account. It'll ask you to confirm your email address. You just go to your email, you click the link to say, this is my email account, and then you'll verify your account, it'll log you in. And you'll essentially come to a page that looks a little bit like this game here, this page here. So it should start you with a project that's just called My Game by default. If for some reason it doesn't, you can add a new game in here. And we may actually add a new game just for this example, just so we can be starting from scratch. So if we click on new title, we'll just call this our Playfab. I mean, are we doing a shooting gallery game? We could do it. Let's just call it shooting gallery, shall we? Okay. You can add like a logo and that for your game. You can say what sort of genre it is as well. Ours is going to be shooter, single player. It's going to be free to play. And I don't know, at the moment, I might just chuck it on itch or something. Okay, that sounds fine. You can come back into this page and change it later. So let's create that title. And again, if I want to go back to that main page to see it, you can now see I've got two games here. I've got one called Shooting Gallery, and then I've got the old one that I had as well. Now these codes, these you kind of want to keep private. These are test projects. I don't mind that they're being shared now. But these are your codes that you'll need when you're making an API request from your game to Playfab. You'll need to say, hey, this is my game. And this is your unique identifier for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and open Notepad. And I'm going to copy that in for now, just so I don't forget it. So let's drop that in there. Okay, so now that we've got our game, if you went into your game, you could then have a look at, this is your kind of overview of what you can do within Playfab. So generally, you've got a statistics view here. We're not going to run through everything. And the sort of things that we could go and have a look at then is you can click onto your players. We haven't had any players. This is the new game that I just made, right? So we've got 0 players. If this was a proper game, though, you would have all of your players who've ever logged in here. You can search for certain players. You can sort it by recent logged in as well. You can even add a player yourself in here as like a test player if you wanted to. So a Softermint in chat asks, is it possible to associate a new account with an existing developer account? I saw there was a sign-in with Microsoft, but does that include dev accounts? Well, do you mean the Playfab account? So I know that Playfab, from a user perspective, you can sign in with like a Windows account, an Xbox, a Steam, a Google account, those sort of things. In terms of this kind of Playfab profile as a creator, I'm not 100% of that answer for you, unfortunately. So I'm not too sure. Okay. So yeah, this is where you can see your players, and then you can go ahead and you can analyze things in here as well, but we've got no data. There's no point of us going into here. Does it accept anonymous players, asks Baukereg. So, good evening, how you doing? You can make it so it would make an account automatically, but that's one of the things. If you're not using something like Steam, where it would automatically just use this Steam login to log you in, that's one way to make it a bit more kind of like the player doesn't need to know that they're logging into Playfab at that point. But if you're not using a system like that and you are like signing in with a user, like an email account, then you are going to have that point where they need to log in. You can make it so they skip, but then you won't be tracking information on them. Yeah, there is a page there just linked as well. Thank you, partly. Yeah, you can sign in with Android and all that. So you can make it easier for people to sign in, but ultimately you need them to sign in. You could make the username just like, I'm sure you could probably make it so they don't have to put in a username, but they would need some form of key field in that database, right? Which is going to be their email address if you're not signing in with another authentication method. Oh, a device ID. Sorry, I see what you're saying. So they can just do it based on their phone ID, like the MAC address or whatever of their device, is it? That may be something that's possible, yeah. I don't know 100% about that. But I trust that if you're reading that page, then it probably is a thing. Okay, so we made our Playfab account, right? We'll come back to this a little bit later. Now, what we're going to do is go ahead and create a UI so that we can get someone to log in, so that we can get this ball rolling and get players added onto our Playfab account, right? Or in our game, I should say, rather than added onto our Playfab account. So let's try and think what we want to do then. We want to we're going to set up a login window. So when the game starts, the level you load into will just show a login window. So let's start with that, shall we? Should we just make a new level? Go here. Let's make this window look a little bit nicer. I'm going to just sort out a little... Actually, we can just do it in this folder. It's no problem. We're going to go ahead and save this. We're going to save this map as our Playfab login. All right, so this is going to be the level that we start the game on. So let me go into my project settings now, and we go to maps and modes, and we want these players now to start on that map, right? So we want them to start on our Playfab login. So when we load into the editor, or if you package the game, it'll go to this page first. Okay, so let's go ahead. We can save that, close that down. A couple of things that I like doing as well in a new project, I'm just going to do so I don't go crazy, is I change this asset editor open location to the main window. So every time we open a window, it doesn't do it in a separate tab like this. So now what you'll see is if I open any sort of form of asset, it will open like this. It opens, oh crikey, what? I swear I just changed it. I think it's for assets, not those windows, sorry, so that's not the best example. If I opened this, for example, you'll see it opens as a tab instead of a new window. That's all I was doing there. Okay, let's go back. So we've made our Playfab login. I'm just gonna go ahead and set, we're gonna add in just something to make this level different. So this level is gonna have cubes in the corners, all right? This is our login level. We're not actually going to run around on this level. It's just later we'll be able to differentiate between the two levels. So we have this level here, which is our login, and then we'll go ahead and make a new level. And this is going to be where our game is, all right? So let's make a new level, and this is going to be our shooting, wasn't it like a shooting range? I think I called it my game, right? So I'll make an empty level again. This time I'll just chuck in a sphere. We'll scale this up a little bit so we can just see the sphere. Did I scale it up? Oh, I added in an empty actor. Apologies. It looked like a sphere. We want to add in a sphere. There we go. That's what I was expecting. Okay, we can scale this by 5 or so, let's say. Great. So now we have two levels that look distinct from one another. One with the giant orb and one with the 4 squares. Okay, let's save this level, and we'll just call this our post Playfab login. So that's where we're going to get taken after we log in. I think it also has a guest option. That'd be great to see that. If you got any more information on that, looking at the docs, I'd be interested, because that's going to make it even more accessible for people to chuck in game jams. I'd really like that, where people can just enter their name. on the leaderboard section of it rather than having to sign in, you know? So let's press save. And then we're going to go back to our login page. And we're going to want to make a UI now that's going to be on the screen where it says login, or if you haven't got a login, then you can register instead. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. So I'm going to make a folder called UI in here. And we'll probably start through making ourselves a widget blueprint. And this is going to be our Playfab login screen. Let's just call it for now. Okay. So for this, I don't particularly mind. We're not going to be super fussy with how the UI looks. All right, it's going to be pretty basic, but hopefully at least you can take some time and make it look however nice you want. Or maybe you've already got UI if it's a game that you've already started making, and you're just adding this into it. So we've got ourselves this widget here. This is what's going to pop up at the start of the game. Or maybe you might want to have it as it only pops up when you finish a level. If you want to submit a high score, then you need to log in to Playfab. You could do it that way too. But we're going to just act as if it's the start of the game. So first off, let's just make this look a bit prettier, I guess. So we have a border. We'll chuck some color onto this. So I tend to make my kind of theme is typically like a goldy color that I use. So we'll go for that sort of gold color. This border is going to be set so that it stretches and fills everywhere, like so. Okay, so we've got this big chunk, and then we're going to go in and try and set this up a bit like a web page layout where we have horizontal and vertical boxes, and we'll use some spaces to try and keep things spaced out nicely as well. So let's go for a vertical box first. Actually, I might do horizontal first. Let's just go and drag one of these in. And then let's get some spaces in there as well. So we're going to utilize, in order to do a quick layout that can scale on different different screen sizes, we're going to go ahead and utilize spaces in here. It'll make sense once I've got a few of them in. So we'll add a vertical box in here with 2 spaces either side of it. And the important thing that we need to do with these is make sure that they're set to fill as well. So we click on our vertical box as spaces as well. We click fill. And you can see that they're filling out the page equally now because of the 1 number over here. So if I want my spaces to just be little borders on the side, I can take them down to be a smaller ratio than that middle bit. So if I put them as 0.25, there you go. So it takes up a smaller ratio of the screen for us. So yeah, that's how we'll get started with this. And what we're going to have is something called a widget switcher in here, which will allow us to switch between 3 different panels. One is going to be, hey, log in. The other one's going to be, you want to make an account, sign up. And the third one's going to be, you forgot your password, get an email sent to you. And Playfab does that all automatically for you. It'll send you just say, this person's requesting an email reset. They send an email with a link, you click it, ask you for a new password, it's done. You know, you don't have to implement all that kind of back end, which is really nice. Okay, so let's try and think what we want to go ahead and do with this. We are going to be adding some things to it. As I said, we're going to work on adding, you know, a widget switcher into this so that we can display the different things at once. So for now, I'm going to just add in a widget switcher. We don't have any widgets to hook into it at the moment. But that's going to live in here. And again, we just put some spaces around this as well. So I'm going to copy these spaces and paste them into here. So now what we should have, there you go. You can see that we have our widget switcher, which is vertically spaced. That's why we had this vertical box in here. And then we have our horizontal box that we have spaced out with these 2 spaces as well. All right. And the purpose of that is just so when we scale on different screens, it'll keep this aspect ratio. That's all we're doing. Now, if you want, you could chuck a title in here as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go grab a text box. We'll chuck this within our vertical one. I'm going to put it right at the top of this. In here, we might want this to fill. We might want it center. I'm probably going to wrap my text in a scale box actually to keep that kind of stretch the screen and things still look the same size relative to one another. So we'll do that. We'll make sure that this is also set to fill, and the scale box is going to be set to fill as well. So you can see that the text changed with it. Hey, Slothinator, nice to see you in chat. So this first bit that we're going to do then, this is going to be our title. So let's just call, this isn't a, we don't want this to say like login or register and that. This is just going to be like your main page title. So you might have your game title here, for example. Because on each widget we make for the login, the register, and forgot password, we'll add the individual subtitles onto those. So let me just call this like shooting range or shooting gallery, I think I called it. And then if I want to sort out the spacing and everything around here, I'll probably add another spacer in, whack it here. And then we probably want to make this scale box not be as big as the widget itself. So we'll make this a lot smaller. Maybe we'll put the scale box on a 0.5. It's probably too big still, 0.25, like the gaps. Okay, well, let's just get this central. All right, so we got our title, and the idea now is that in this box here is where we're going to have a widget, which is going to switch based on what you want to do. So that's the start point of it. So since all of our panels are going to have fields that we fill in, where it has like a label on one side, and then on the other side it has the text box that you type stuff in, we're going to go ahead and create a reusable kind of field that we can use. So yeah, let's start with that. Let's go and make a new one of these. So it's the same as we did last time. We make a widget blueprint. This is going to be a widget blueprint, and this time we're just going to call this a what should we call it? Maybe I think generic input field. If you think this is just something we're going to reuse as an input field anyway. So this is what our input field is going to look like by default. It's just an empty screen once again. But we want to kind of keep this simple. So I think we'll probably just do, if we want one next to one another, we'll go with a horizontal box that goes sideways. So horizontal box, we'll whack that there. We can probably, we don't need, canvas panels are typically good for like your full screen widgets, but these little sub widgets that we're going to layer into other things, you can normally just get rid of them. Let me just, can you just plain delete it? Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, so we've got a horizontal panel. If you want, you can resize this if it helps you imagine what it's going to look like. We can just make it roughly the same kind of size, but ultimately we're going to make it so it scales based on the size that it's meant to fill anyway. So, okay, you can also, if you want, you can go to custom and give it a resolution and that, but we'll just stick with this for now. So in our horizontal box, we want to go ahead and add a text. So this is going to be our label. So we add this in. We're going to make this fill again, so it fills the entire space that it's in. We'll probably, I think we're going to do a scale box like we've done before. So the scale box is really up to you whether you want to do them. The tricky thing with scale box is it does keep things looking like uniform if you're changing the screen resolution, but it also means if you're typing into a box and the text starts filling the box, that the text will start getting smaller so it fits in. There's elements like that where based on the length of the text won't be a uniform size across different elements on your page. So that might be a design decision you want to kind of consider. Okay, so we have a text box. This is going to be our field or label, I guess we call this for now. Actually, let's give it a better name. I like to try and start them with what type of widget they are. So text underscore, and then we'll just say our, we'll just call it label. Okay, so we've got our label, and then the other side of it, let's make this text stretch out, sorry, within here. That's the one I was looking for, sorry. And then within our label, next to our label, sorry, we're going to go and have a text box. So we can drag this in as well into this horizontal box. And we need this to fill as well so we can see it. And there we go. It's split 50-50. You can change the ratio here if you want. You could make this one take twice as much room as the other one. But yeah, as I said, we're not going to spend too long thinking about how things look here. We're going to wrap this with scale box just like we did with the text. And then we're going to make it fill. So where are our options here? Like that. Don't worry about how this texture looks as well. If you just provide your own texture here, it's because there's no texture at the moment. But if you just replace that, I don't know if I've got any textures in here. Can I just check gray? Yeah, see, I chuck the gray one in. It gets rid of that kind of visual issue. So that's nothing to worry about there. Okay, so the purpose of us doing this, just so you're aware, is we're going to be adding this onto our forms that we make. So for example, I can just in case you haven't done like UI in this way before, what we can do now is we can add this generic input field into here, and we can add a bunch of them if we want. So they're actually, oh, they're in a widget switcher at the moment. That was the worst place to put them because it doesn't really show. If we add them into this vertical box, there you go. You can see that it's added a bunch of these fields in for us down here. So at the moment, they all say the same thing. And because we've made them as a widget blueprint, so they all look the same. The thing that's a bit tricky about that is we can't really go and change what the text says here. So what we need to do is to edit this blueprint to make it customizable. So that's the next step that we're going to get into here. It's pretty straightforward to do. So let's delete those because we don't actually need those. We're going to save, and then we're going to go back to this screen here. So we want to be able to change this value here. Is he going to do variables or slots? I'm going to do it pretty straightforward with variables. So let's make this a variable. So this was our text thing by here that we want to change. So I'm going to go into the code side of things here. And we want to get hold. The reason we made it a variable is so we can access it on this screen. We're going to grab this text label. Oh, my UI is messing up a little bit for me at the moment. I might need to restart Unreal if this carries on. Yeah, I'm dragging stuff onto this graph. And it's kind of hovering black. So if I just say get, you can see it, but on my screen it's messing up a little. So if you pardon me for just a moment, I'm just going to restart this project, and we'll be back in just a moment now. Okay, so our project was called Playfab project, I think it was. So we'll open this up. Intermission, yes, let's get some nice intermission music on, shall we? Okay, there we are. It's restarted again. And we can even open the assets to carry on with from where we were. Wonderful. Okay. So what we were doing, just to refresh ourselves, is we want to be able to change. When we add this in, we want a way to change what this text block says. So for now, I'm just going to give it a name of, this is going to be default label, for example, okay? So we want to set that text label to be a specific value, but we can't access it, if you remember, from when we add it into another widget. So we're just going to add a new variable that we can access. So if I do set text, so you can set the text value of it by providing a string. So if we promote this to a variable, sorry, let me plug these things in. If we promote this to a variable, give it a meaningful name, so this will be our label text, and we make sure that this is instance editable so that you can see it. What this now means is when I add in one of these generic input fields, that I can go ahead and set a value, hello stream, and it'll say whatever I want in there as well. Yes, I do know that partly. Sorry, I did forget to use them. I was just trying to work out what was happening on my UI, if I'm honest with you. It doesn't show on stream. Stream shows it fine, but on my screen, the UI elements just go black, like a black box that you can't see anything. It's really silly. But there we go. So this allows us to set that value at least. Now we might want to do something for this text value here as well. This is where we're going to be writing stuff in. It's a bit hard to see on this. It doesn't properly look like a text field for us because of how we've made it fill this slot here, because we've chucked it in the widget switcher. If I just chuck it back in here, it'll be a more reasonable kind of size for us. Yeah. So this is where we'd write our text into that box. So let's go and have a look at how we can go ahead and do that. So on we should give this a meaningful name. So let's go back to our designer. let's change this thing to have a meaningful name. So like I said, my format is I like to do the name of what kind of widget is, underscore, and then you can go ahead and give it a name. So this is going to be our input field. Okay, so compile, let's go to our graph. And from here, we can grab this input field now. And there's a function you can call on it called set, is it hint? Yes, set hint text. So we're just going to do the exact same pattern as we did before. The text we're going to promote to a variable. We're going to make sure that that variable is editable, and we're going to go ahead and give it a name, which is going to be our hint text. Excellent. Okay, so we could technically now go ahead and add one of these in. And when I click on this, I can give this a value. So let's make this look a little bit more sensible, like password with 2 S's would help instead of 3. And then we may want to go ahead and say, enter your password here. Okay, it's a little bit obvious. Now, ooh, it's not showing up for me. Did I connect the pins? I did. Oh, is it based on, I think there might be something you set on the text so that it shows the hint text possibly that I forgot about. I'll have a look at that in a moment. But the idea here anyway is that we're able to just click on these, set our values in here, and then it allows us to reuse the same one over and over then. Let's just duplicate it, shall we? We can add multiple ones, and we can just change this to say username, for example. And then this one can go ahead and say like email address. We can do things like that. So that is why we've started this off. Oh, you can see these do have enter your password here. I wonder why it didn't work for the other ones. That's an odd one. Shall we go ahead and just, I think it might have messed up when I added a new one in. Yeah, it just messed up because I added it late. Yeah, bug with widgets. Thank you, Joe. There we go. I thought that I did it correctly. I'm glad I didn't go digging through the code going, oh, where have I gone wrong? So instead of enter your password here, let's zoom in. Sorry, it might be a bit small on the screen. This could go ahead and say enter your username. This will say enter your email address. But if you remember, we're going to do this on a separate widget ourselves, right? So we're going to get rid of these, and we're going to chuck it in its own little widget that we're going to add on a separate screen. But I tell you what, let's just leave them here for a sec. And what we want to do is just get this on the screen so we can start to see how this is going to look. So what I'm going to do is just to test it up. I think we can probably chuck it onto the level blueprint. So if we go to level blueprint, and we can do it on the begin play in here. We need to get our player controller because that's the thing that your UI is going to be associated with. And then you can create a widget in here. And we can create the widget of type. And the one that we made earlier was the Playfab login screen. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And there's a few things you need to do when you're creating a widget. I think you need to add to viewport, if I remember. Yeah, add to viewport. So we get this widget we just created. We want to add to viewport. And then we also, I think you want to set the input mode. Is it set input mode? Yeah, so we might set this to UI only because you're not meant to be playing the game at this point. So what widget do you want to focus? You can do that if you want, but we just want to get this player controller hooked in. And then the final thing is the mouse cursor. So there's a thing called show mouse cursor. Or show cursor. Oh, it might be off of the player. Apologies. Show, there we go. So we want to set show mouse cursor. And the reason that we do this is by default, it won't always stay on the screen. And because this is a UI thing, we want to make sure that it's there. Yes, there is. We're about to do that partly, Atomic. Don't you worry. Thank you though for pointing out. That's part of it. I just want to show why we need that first. So we're going to set that to true. Okay, so now if we go and press play on this level, you can see that it's added our UI to the screen. Wonderful. Let's make it a little bit bigger, shall we? Let's press F11 to full screen. Can I not full screen? Why can't I full screen? Okay, it's not working for me at the moment. So you're just going to have to bear with it this size. Apologies. But when we write into here, so I can write in Dan there. I can put my name as Dan at dan.dan. And then password, I love my mum. Okay, so the problem here, as Partly was alluding to, is you can see your password, and that's not typical, right? So fortunately, there is a little option on a text box where you can say this is a password, and then I always say the word wrong, obfuscate. Someone write it in chat and I'll try and read it. Basically make it illegible so you can't read it. It hides it. It makes it secret. It makes it all stars or dots so you can't see what you're writing in. I still can't say it now that I've seen it. Why is the word obfuscate? Is it not a word? Is it a weird word or is it just me? Crikey. Is it obfuscate? Obfuscate. Thanks, Rubik's, by the way. Lovely to have you here. Obfuscate. Does anyone else struggle with it, or is it literally just me? I think it might just be me. Okay, so now let's build on that generic input field that we're doing. So our generic input field was this that I've shown you earlier, where we have like our text, our label on the one side, and what we're writing in. And as you can see, it was mentioned earlier, there's a password thing in here. So is password. If I turn that on, great, we can now play. But now on any of these, they're all going to be secret, which isn't so good if you're making a username and you make a typo. All right, so let's go ahead and sort out that. So in order to make this something we can set per one, we're going to do a similar little thing before where we have a variable that we set and we can use that then in order to control whether or not it's a password. So if I grab this input field here, this is a thing that we want to make kind of obfuscated. Look at me using my power words. So we want to say set is password. And then we're going to promote this to a variable. And I'm going to use my new word. I'm going to say, call this should obfuscate. All right. I got it. I had to double check my spelling. I hate that word. Okay, so now by default it's false, but what it means is when we add these onto any widget, we can select per one. Should it be obfuscated? I hate the word. I'm going to stop saying it. Should it be hidden is what I'm going to say for now. All right, so the reason we can't see it at the moment, you may have noticed, oh, it's not in this list, is because I forgot to make it exposed. So we're going to go into here, we're going to click on that variable we've just made, that little eye there. That's what you need to click on. Okay, so now we can go here, we can click on the password like that. And now when we go ahead and we type our password into there on here, we should see that it's covered. Perfect. Okay, great. That's what we wanted. Masked. That's a nicer for it. Should mask. I'm going to stop saying it, the other word for it. I can't handle it. Alrighty, so that's good. If we remember though, what I said is I don't really want to just add these in manually because I want to use this same page for both the login, register, and forgot my password. And we're going to use that thing called a widget switcher I said earlier. So we're going to make sub widgets that this widget switcher can switch between and show whichever one that is right based on what the player has clicked. So these we will delete in just a moment, but I'm probably going to keep them for now because we can just copy and paste them into the next one we're doing. So we're going to make some new widgets. So we're going to make our login widget to begin. So a login screen. To be honest, we can do a sign in. We'll start with a sign in. It's not a problem. So to save some time, you're welcome to make your own widget from scratch, but I'm just going to duplicate this and we're going to call it WBP. This is going to be our sign up widget. Okay. We're going to go into this So we don't want it to say shooting gallery. It looks exactly the same because I copied it at the moment. So I need to get rid of some of these things so it's not as confusing for us. So we don't need a widget switcher in this. We might want these. We might want spacers in between them possibly. Let's get those into here. So I'm just getting rid of some of the things in here. And then where it says shooting gallery, this is now going to say, let's go into the text here. This is now going to say sign up or create new account or whatever, right? Let's say Playfab account. Yeah, the term hidden is a bit confusing, isn't it? If you say that, because it makes out as if it's, you can't see it. But you can see it, it's just masked. I agree with you. Okay, so that is our title there. Now these all look a bit tiny at the moment, don't they? So how about we just set them to fill, and then we can give them a ratio, and then we can make it look whatever kind of style that we want there. That might be better. We'll get us another spacer in. You're welcome to do this however you want. I'm just going to add in a spacer here. Oh, I did it a bit too far. Sorry, into there I was trying to do. You can move them up with these arrows if that's any easier for you, because I tend to keep making mistakes. So you can set it up in this way. And maybe you want these ones to have a smaller gap between them. So let's do 0.1. So they look a bit closer together. And what is missing from the bottom? Probably a button, right? So we'll go and add those in a sec. Now, to make this obvious that we're working with something a little bit different, I'm also going to just change these borders to be a little bit smaller. Yeah, and these as well can be a bit smaller. To make it obvious though, I'm going to go to this border, I'm going to change the color so it's clear to us when we're working on the different ones. So we'll try and go with colors that roughly go with the gold. So we'll do this one's going to be silver. Let's just go with that for now. And now that these are in the right place, we can change these. So enter your username. Some of them are like you question whether or not you actually want to write a prompt. Enter your email. Yeah, you can decide, and then enter your password. Okay, that one is correct. So this is where the scale box that I told you about the text can look a bit weird. Can you see how the text size in each one of these is different? I'm going to leave it for mine, but it does look a little bit like rubbish in that way, in my opinion. So have a think how you'd want to design your UI. Just to take a quick break from the content as well to say thank you for Alicia Griffin for the wonderful raid and welcome along to her community. We are currently doing a sponsor stream where we are checking out Playfab, which is part of the Microsoft Games stack, and it essentially allows you to create a user account for players of your game, and then you can use that user account in order to track information about how people play your game. You can use it to give players in-game currency and have your game interact with that data, or you might want to record a high score after a player has finished the level. You can do those sort of things with Playfab, along with host multiplayer servers and have voice over IP services and things like that as well. So we're doing a stream today and a stream tomorrow. This first one is looking at setting up a form so that players can log in, connect to Playfab, and they can make a new account. And then log in with that new account. And if they forget their password, they can send them a reset password email as well. So we'll do that to begin with. And then tomorrow we're going to look at how to use those accounts and work on a bit of a game, a very simple game where you get a high score and it'll submit it to a leaderboard. Okay? Bro. Nice to have everyone here. So chat, you guys are great. We've got to get back to the content, all right? So I might be a bit slower responding to messages in chat, but I do appreciate people being here. Okay, so we were saying we wanted to add some buttons in here as well, right? So let's go ahead and add in a button. So you can just drag it onto the UI. I find that easier sometimes than having to kind of drag it in that list. I tend to make more mistakes. Our button is going to have a scale, some text inside of it as well, so we can actually, why is it only showing me button? Come on, show me text. Thank you. We can drop that inside of there. We make this text fill it probably like so, chuck it in the middle, and then we might wrap it with a scale box in a sec as well, but we'll just have this one as create account. And then we'll have another spacer underneath it. Let's move that below. I'm going to add another spacer again while I'm down there, and then we'll duplicate up this button as well. So there are different ways to you can manually interact with the Playfab API using whatever code that you're using. The nice thing about using something like Unity or Unreal is that they've made libraries for you to use to really simplify the process, so you don't have to worry about manually making API calls using like web protocol. Instead, you can just call a function called register new user and it does everything for you, which is quite nice. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and finish setting up this little register widget. Okay, so let's get this button in a scale box, shall we? So you can wrap it up with a scale box. There you go. So the button looks a little bit healthier now, right? Okay, now we should give these names. So I'm going to call this button create account. We're going to give this generic input, and then we'll give it a password. We're going to give this one generic input field, and we'll call it email. And then we're going to give this one generic email field, and we'll call this username. Okay, cool. And then we probably want a way, if they've already got an account, then have like a login button as well. So let's just duplicate this button here. We'll chuck it between the two padding things. We might make this one a little bit smaller. And this one is just going to be called button switch to login. So we change this text, and the text is going to say already signed up? Log in. Here. Something like that, let's say. Okay. So there's our little box. And to show you, if you're not really familiar with doing UI in Unreal, what we're doing now, we're making a widget to go into that main login screen we made earlier. So remember, we had this widget switcher. So now I can go ahead and add in this sign up widget that I've just made. We can drag this into our widget switcher. And there we go. We have it. And the nice thing about the reason we're using all these kind of fill and scales all the time is if I want to change the size of this now, this particular one, let's say that we want this to be really tiny. This is just going to scale up accordingly and fill the gap as well. So yeah, that looks fine for me for now. We can get rid of these. These were there for an example, right? Done. Done. Okay. So this is our sign up. We'll probably make a couple of forms. They'll look kind of similar, just having a little bit of a difference in terms of the layout of them. So create new Playfab account. Do we want to name? Yeah, I just want to think before I'm going to copy this across because it's going to be pretty much the same as the login one, right? But if I'm going to copy something, I want to make sure that I've not got mistakes in here that I'll have to fix in two places after I've kind of copied it. I guess what we could do is we could create some button events for these already. Yeah, so when we click the button, we want it to do something specific here, right? So click on the button, go to onClicked, and it's just moved us to the graph side of it. And this is where we can implement, oh, your button has been clicked. Now, if you think about this, we don't know what this button should do at this point exactly. We will code that a little later. Effectively, what this should do is make an API call over to Playfab so that you can make a new account. Well, we'll handle that a little later down the line. But the thing to think about is we might want this widget to exist in a different part of the system. Maybe not just on our main login screen. You might pop it up later in the game as well. So instead of handling the logic directly in this graph, what I'm going to make a event dispatcher instead. So what this does is effectively when I click this button, it's going to shout out, hey, the sign in button, create account has been clicked. And then wherever we've added this widget, we can define what it should do there. So let's just go through that logic to show how that works. So we've made a new event dispatcher. So this is going to be, we'll give it a better name, shall we? create account event. Or maybe we'll just call it on create account. That's what you tend to do with these sort of events. And we'd probably want to pass, if you think about it, when they click on this, we'd want to pass along with it the username, the email address, and the password. Right, so we can go ahead and give this a certain members that will be passed along with it. So let's compile this quickly. We'll go to our event dispatcher and we'll press the plus here to add a couple of parameters. So let's pass them over as strings. First one is going to be username. Second one is going to be email address. And the third one is going to be their password. Okay. So what this means now is if I try and call that function, I broadcast, it's not calling a function, let's make that clear. If I try and kind of broadcast this event out, it then is waiting for me to pass that information to it. So I can go ahead and I can tie in these fields that I've got. I can look at the data in each one of these and pass it into it. So first off, let's start with the username. That's the first thing we've got listed here. So let's look for the thing that I nicely named earlier. Here's my username. We're going to go ahead and if you think about this, the structure of it, we made this earlier. It's made up of a label and an input field. So we want the thing called input field. So let's just do input field. There we go. There's a get text box input field. We're going to do that. And then from that, we're going to do get text, I think it is. That's going to get the value out. And then we'll let it do a conversion over to username. Okay, it looks a bit ugly with the wires. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it, so you shouldn't be worried about it. Okay, same thing on each one of these now. So the first one was the username. We're now going to do the email. Get. We're going to go to text. Uh-oh, my UI is messing up again. So I might need to restart Unreal again in just a second. It's weird, it's only started happening today. Peculiar. And then we want to do get text box like that and drag that into the email. Okay, and then the final one is going to be, oh, I didn't name the last one, it would seem. That was an accident. Oh, I did name it. Let's refresh this node. Okay, my UI is messing up again. Apologies, we're going to have to restart Unreal. It doesn't take long. I haven't, like in all my streaming in Unreal, this bug I haven't had, but the one time I need to do a stream officially to show how to do something, it messes up for me. How dare. Okay, let's go back to our logic. So we were just filling out the different members here, right? So we get our password this time, and then it's kind of going to be the exact same logic. So we can copy these if we want. I've just pasted that in. Connect this one up, and then connect this one up to here. Alrighty, it took a while to get there. Apologies for that. But effectively, what we're doing is when you click this button, it's going to read the information that's in each one of these, and then it's going to chuck it into this event so that you can handle it. And Outfrost, I'm not going to be redeeming the Welsh command in the middle of a sponsored stream, unfortunately. I will refund your points. Okay, so that's one of the buttons. What other button did we have? Let's go back to the designer. We have this one here. Okay, so let's go down. Again, I've accidentally clicked on the text, so let's click on the button, unclicked, and then we can do a similar sort of thing here. So let's think, well, we want to switch to login here, right? So we'll make a new event dispatcher. This is going to be on switch to login. And this, we don't really need to send anything with it. If you want to be fancy, you could check the value in the email or the username in case they've accidentally written it in, and you could copy that across to the other form if you want. But we're just going to go ahead and just keep it as simple as that. So to show you why we've done that, I've explained, but it always helps to see. What that means now is we are able to, on this screen, before we wouldn't have been able to click on these individual buttons and bind to their on clicks. But because we've made these event dispatchers, what that means is when I click on this widget, there's events at the bottom. and now we can hook into those events and do logic whenever they're fired. So on switch to login, we'll just press plus on that, and we also have our on create account. Now we don't actually have anything to do here yet. We don't have a, for example, on switch to login, we don't have a login screen to switch to yet. So we're not going to go ahead and do that. And on create account, we don't have a way to contact the Playfab API yet. So we don't need to do that either. But it means that we filled out this bit of the form so that we can, when we copy it to make our login screen instead of the sign up screen, most of it is going to be done for us. We just need to rename a few things. So yeah, I'm happy with that. It doesn't seem to save whenever I resize this display to make this look a little bit more like we expect to see it. It doesn't seem to respect that when I relaunch the editor, but that's okay. Okay, so we've got this. Does this look okay? I think it looks fine. So we're gonna go ahead. I mean, the one thing I might, no, I was gonna think, should we put spacing between those? But it really doesn't matter. We said we're not gonna be too fussy with the UI. So let's go ahead. Let's jump to the content browser. We'll get our sign up widget, and I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna duplicate this, Control W, and we're gonna now make this a login widget. And the login widget is gonna be the same. Let's change the color so we can identify the difference between them. So we go on our border, we go to the color in the brush color, and this one will make this like a greeny color. That's fine. So that differentiates it. We're not creating a Playfab account, right? We are going to be login to Playfab account. And we are going to log in with our email address. That's your kind of unique identifier there. So we don't need this username one anymore. We can get rid of that. It's warning us, oh, you're using this. And we are, but we'll fix up the blueprints in a moment. So we'll press yes on that. We can get rid of the additional spacer that we had here between them. Good. And then this button text is going to have to change to say login, like so. And then this button is going to be changing to say create new account. Okay, that works fine. So what we need to be cautious of is renaming these things. So the email and passwords, that stuff is fine. But the button here, it's not actually switched to login. This is going to be switched to sign up, right? And then our login button is not going to be create account. It's going to be login. Okay, otherwise though, it should be fine. So we got issues because of the graph, and very right, it doesn't, the old stuff that we were hooking up to this doesn't make sense anymore. So we need to tweak this a little bit. It's nice and quick to do though, because we just copied the last one. So we no longer have a username. We get rid of that, which means we can get rid of these things. And I mean, we could move it, but I'm trying not to waste time fussing with that. So there we go. We still have that. We might want to change the name of it as well though. So this is on create account. This is now going to be on login. Let's just say clicked, just to make it clear. And then this one isn't switched to login. If we remember, this is our switch to sign up now. So we're just changing it around a little bit. That's all we're doing. But otherwise, see how quick that one was compared to the last. So what we could do now, I guess, if we go to our main screen, we could go in and add that extra widget in. And because it's in a widget switcher, it'll only show one at a time. So let's go and look for our login widget. There it is. Add that to the widget switcher. So now the widget switcher will show one of these two. So there you go. We see our difference between it. So if we want, we can try and hook up. Let's try and hook up some of those buttons so you can see how these event dispatchers work, shall we? So if I go down to the event dispatcher on the login widget, we haven't clicked on these yet. This is the new one we've just made. We're going to click plus on that. Did that do? I'm wondering why we've got, hang on, login clicked on create account. Oh yes, these are the previous ones. So these are from our sign up widget, just to keep it clearer so we don't get confused. And then this one is going to be from our login widget. Ta-da. Let's get this in. There you go. You saw my confused face for a moment, so I thought let's avoid that next time. So let's go back to the main view of this, and we also want to go ahead and hook into that sign up. Switch to sign up, which is when they press create new account. I'm going to click onto that. Great. So we've got the same thing for both of these now, right? Do you know what? I'm going to do it just for the sake of it. I'm going to try and tie the colors to the actual form, so it helps people follow. We got the silver one and the green one now, so it matches to these different ones, right? Makes a bit more sense. Okay, so now that we've got that up, let's make it. At the moment, this will do nothing. Let's double check that. I'll press play. Oh, okay. I want to sign up. Doesn't do anything. Great. So let's make it do something. Now that we've got the widget switcher, we've got two different widgets to switch between, we can do the logic. So let's go in. So if I am on my sign up widget and they want to switch to the login one, I just need to get hold of my login widget. And we need to get hold of our widget switcher. And we're going to say widget switcher. Oh, I feel it's got a rubbish name, but I'm just going to stick with it for now. Widget switcher 81. The 80 before you were glorious, but you are the best. We're going to set widget. Is it set widget? I thought it was set widget. Widget switcher. Is it active? Set active widget. That's the one. Okay, so set active widget. In here, it asks what widget do you want to connect to. We've got our login, and that's as simple as that. So now when we click that button, it'll broadcast this event, and then we've hooked into this event here, and it will tell the widget switcher to switch to a different widget. So really, we're going to do the exact same thing down on this lower one as well. So let's should we copy these down? Let's move this up as well so it follows the same pattern between them. So the widget switcher stays the same. We're actually going to swap the login widget for the sign up widget this time. Plug that in, and then we just need to hook these up. Okay. So let's see if that works for us. So now if I click this, it changes. I click this, it changes back. Wonderful. Okay, so we also may want to do a, like you've forgotten your password. So it probably makes sense to have forgot your password on the login screen, right? So we should probably add that now before we forget. So login widget, we'll go back to the designer. We've got our login. We're just going to copy these two things, this button that we've got and the space. Control W doesn't work. Okay, Control C, Control V. Okay, one at a time. Okay, let's move these up. Right, the ones that we have copied here, just want to make sure, yeah, this one. Okay, so this is going to be not switched to sign up. This is going to be switched to forgot password. So make it a little bit different. And then we need to change the text for that as well, don't we? So again, this UI is a bit simple. I apologize. It's not the best eye candy, but yeah, we live. Okay, so forgot password. We now need to make that do something as well. So like we did last time, we're going to look for the click. On click. And then we're going to go ahead and do another one of these. So can we copy this? I don't know if does it let you copy it? No, it doesn't let you copy a dispatcher. So we just add a new dispatcher. Oh, maybe it's because I'm mid-game actually. No, it still doesn't. Okay, so on switch to forgot password. And we're just going to do the exact same thing. And go ahead and call this. Okay, great. So now we need to make the forgot password one. So the forgot password, let's think how that's going to look. It's just going to say, what is your email address? And then a button to say, remind me, or go back to login. So it'll be pretty similar to the one that goes back to switches to login at the moment is the sign up. If you think when we click on this, it already takes us back to the to the login window. So I'll probably use this as a template for it. So let's go to wherever this is in our content browser. We'll duplicate this. This is going to be forgot password. So I know it's a little bit weird that I'm calling them all widgets, even though I've called them widget blueprint with WBP. But for me, it's just to remind that these are things that are placed within the main widget, that you're adding them as sub widgets. It's not a great naming convention. I don't recommend that you copy me in future projects, but yeah, just to explain why some of them have widget at the end of them. Okay, so let's go to the forgot password widget. Looks exactly the same. Let's start making it look different. First, let's change the color. What color would forgot password be? Probably a red. Bad. How dare. It needs to kind of go with our gold though. Let's keep it in that sort of tone. This is going to get changed to forgot password. Let's just make it Playfab account password. Okay. Here we will just need the email address, so we can get rid of that. We can get rid of that. Perfect, that's fine. I don't like how big it looks now, but we're just going to go with it. So this create account button is going to get called forgot password. And then the button at the bottom is going to be, it's still going to be switched to login, but we're just going to say back to login instead. Okay. So we got this. It looks pretty terrible. If we make this a bit bigger, maybe I'll make it look a little less terrible, marginally. Shh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Great UI, Dan. Great UI. Okay, so we need to fix up the events and that for this. So we already have got click events because we copied it from before. So these are both got click events. We can just go straight to them. First, we are going to take this event here. So on create account, if you remember, we're not creating an account, we're just asking for a password reset. So all we need is the email. So let's get rid of the other two. Okay, that means we can delete the stuff that was connected to those other two. And we can just pull from that. Healthy. Looks a bit cleaner now. And then on this, we can keep this on switch to login. This is where I copied the sign up widget, just so we don't have to mess around with any of the names of that. Okay, so we're now in a position where we've got our third widget. We're going to add it to our main overview one. So this is forgot password. Let's add this to the widget switcher. Congratulations, you're in. And there we go. We've got all three now. But we haven't hooked into the events that this one is broadcasting, remember. So let's go down. We're going to go to create account, and we also want to do the switch to login as well. So these we're going to do similar pattern as we did before. Let's comment these and say these are to do with the forgot password. Set the color to be red to go with it, just so if you're new to this, it helps you keep track of this stuff. And we want to do a similar pattern as we did before, just to switch to them. So we'll copy these two parts. If you remember, this just gets the widget switcher, and then we're setting the active widget, and we're going to set that to be the new thing we just added in, which is our forgot password widget. Whack that in. Happy days. We should now be able to switch between them. So let's press play. We can go to already a member, sign in. Okay, great. So now I go to sign in. It doesn't work. Drat. Okay. Where's my button to say you forgot? Did I forget to add it? I think I did. Or has it just not refreshed, perhaps? Where is it? The login widget. Oh, I did create it. It just hasn't refreshed. Isn't that nice? That looks like a little glitch that we've got there, unfortunately. Okay, so when these things happen, the easiest way to resolve it, it's not gonna... Oh, actually, will it? Can you refresh or anything like that? Because I was going to just replace it, but realistically, we've set these things up already. So I don't particularly want to do that if I can help it. But I don't I don't know how else to resolve that. Lots of little Unreal glitches today, which is a little bit of a shame. But if I just add in another login widget, for example, like this one has the extra button, see? All right, stuff it. We're just going to go and do it with a new one. It doesn't matter. Let's just delete the old one. It's a shame though. It shouldn't behave like that. But now we need to re-sign up these, but we can just hook into the old logic still, I hope. So we want that, and we want sign up, and we want to hook into that forgot password as well. Okay, so these now go up into this. The login widget doesn't exist anymore, so we get rid of those, and these now can fall into this green box. Wonderful. We're going to do the switch in then. Let's move this down, move these two up. These are going to be very similar now. So the first sign up widget is going to be this one. And then let's copy just these two. I could have reused it, but it's okay. I don't mind. So this one, we just want to go ahead and get our forgot password widget and hook this in. Okay, lots of effort. I said it'd take a while to set up our UI, didn't I? But it is the way. But the nice thing is we're trying to do it modular, so you can kind of reuse parts of this. You can reuse this generic input field later, which will save you time in a different project. Or you can just use this login and whack it into another project. You might have a different title screen and that. So it's kind of, you earn a bit of time going forward at least. Okay, so we were going to test this, right? So now if I go create account, oh no, it doesn't work. I'm gonna, oh no. My sign-in's not even working. Have I balked it even further? So the sign, this widget. Oh, that's the login one. Oh, it's because I changed the login. That makes total sense. Remember, I had to delete the login widget, so I didn't replace it. Apologies. Okay, this should now work. I'm glad I tested it. So we now go, okay, no, I want to log in. And then if you forgot your password, it takes us to our forgot password page. We can do that, and then we can, we need to change that from saying create account to retrieve password or send password retrieval. And we need to do that logic as well. Back to login isn't working for us. So let's go through and fix these last little bits of problems that we got. So login widget was our red one down here. This one, yeah, can you see I've accidentally made it go to the forgot password widget again? That is incorrect. We want it to go back to the login one. Okay. That is that. We also remember on this, we needed to change the text to actually say something meaningful. So this is going to say send password reset email. Okay, that is that. I think we now have it so it works. We can say already done that. Great, we got login. And then if we forgot, we can go to there. We can press create account. No, wait, is it not refreshed again? We're having so many bugs with the UI today. That's a shame. I just want to double check if I was to restart Unreal, will it fix any of that for me, rather than me having to rehook up those events, because it's already time costly, isn't it? Let's open these back up. Go here. Let's see whether it's actually saved any of it. Forgot password. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so basically refreshing the editor, it means we don't have to reconnect everything. So we've learned that for next time at least. Okay, good. We've got our like hooking up between the different pages now. So that's kind of leading us. We're almost at the bit where we can actually do the Playfab logic, which is cool. So I'm just going to take a quick talking break, get some water down me, and then we'll crack on with this next bit. Okay, break is over. Let's get started. So we're finally going to code. I say code, we're going to do blueprint code. It's still code. But we need to do the bit where we hook into a couple of events that we've left empty. So let's remind ourselves where that was. So on this main page that has these different widgets, if we go to the graph of this, we have a few things that we haven't hooked up. We have on create account. So when that button's pressed, we have on login clicked, and then we have, oh, it's called on create account. Did I not rename the event? That is not the right name for the event. Let me just fix that up. Forgot password in this. On create account should be on forgot password. Let's just do that, shall we? So hopefully now, there we go. It's the wrong one because we've renamed it. Let me just go fix this. Apologies. So on this, we scroll down and on forgot password. That's the one. So that exists there. So we've got these three things that aren't really defined at the moment. Now we need to code this, and really this is just a bit of UI that is going to be disappearing in a moment. So we need to think about logically where is a good place for us to house this logic. So when I say, hey, I want to log into Playfab, where should I kind of route that through? Now there's multiple right answers for this depending on the structure of your game, but I think what we're going to do for this is we're going to use the game instance, and there's a few reasons why I'm recommending we use the game instance. So first off, it's accessible. You can get hold of the game instance really easily from places. You can just say get game instance and you can get hold of it. That's number one. Reason number two, the lifetime suits our needs. So the game instance is created the moment that your game launches, and it'll last all the way until your game closes. And if you think about our Playfab user session, when they open your game and log in, you want to like keep information about the fact that they've logged in until they've finished playing the game. If we tied this to the UI, as soon as they close the UI, we'd no longer have that or that kind of information about the fact that they logged in. So we're going to use the game instance for now. Obviously, as I said, there's different ways to solve this problem, but this is the most straightforward one for a single player, non-multiplayer game at least. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a game instance first then. So we go into this, we're no longer in our UI folder. So I'm going to make a new blueprint class. It's going to be from our game instance. So if I type in game instance, let's click on this, select, and we're just going to call this BP. To make it obvious, I'm going to just call it Playfab game instance. It would more likely be called something like shooting range, based on your game, because your game instance will do more than just the Playfab login, but it just keeps it simple for us for now. Okay, so we've got this game instance, and a game instance will have a place where we can write code. But the first thing you need to remember to do is you need to tell your project, hey, I want you to use this specific game instance, because otherwise it'll just use the default one. So to prove that, let's just, I think there's an event init. Yeah, this is going to be the start play. I could put logic in here, and when I press play, you'll see it doesn't happen because it's not using this game instance. So we need to tell the project to go ahead and use that. So we go into edit, we go to our project settings, and in here, in maps and modes, there's a game instance class down at the bottom here. We're going to choose our new game instance that we just made. So the Playfab game instance. Pow. All right. So that is done. Now, when the game is running and it launches, it will use that game instance. So we're able to write code in here that will actually be used. So we're going to go ahead and make a few different functions for us to call, which are going to be very similar to the functions that we need to finish writing, right? But the first thing we should probably do is, let's start by making those functions. I think that's going to be the better way to do it here. Okay, so the three functions that we want to make are these empty ones that we've got here, right? So we've got a login clicked, we've got our create account, and we've got our forgot password. So we're going to go ahead and make those. So first thing, let's go to our game instance. We're going to go ahead and write create custom event, add custom event. That's the one, apologies. And we want to go ahead and call these based on the different things that I just said. So the first one was, let's just say, sign up. Is that what we called our widget? Sign up? Yeah, that makes sense. The next one, well, sign up is going to take in some information, right? Let's think about that first before we move on to the next. So just like before, we want to pass in probably some strings, which is going to be the different fields. I'm not done yet. You know how long UIs take, but we are onto the actual logic partly where we're using the Playfab API at least. So with our sign up, we had three things that come through. Let's make it match what we had in here. So we can click on that login screen. We can see the sign up. We had username, email, password. Great. Let's do the same. Username, email, and password. Kapow. Okay, so we've got those. We're then going to do our login one. So create custom, no, add custom. I always write it wrong. This is going to be our login. This also has some variables we need to bring in. First one is going to be email. Second one, you can go and check if you want, but the second one is going to be password. If you're unsure, you can just go and check the signatures on the ones we did before. And then the final one, we're going to do add custom event. I got it right first time. And this is going to be forgot password. And this is just going to take in a email. Okay, so we've got those. I'm tempted to do the kind of colors around them again to help people remember. So that one was gray. This one was our green one. And then this one was our red one. Okay, so we got those. So they don't actually do anything. We're going to hook into some Playfab stuff in the middle, but let's make the UI connect to it, and then we don't have to worry about our UI anymore. Do you want my link? Here it is. Kapow, I think you found it though. Thank you, partly. I don't think it does, but thank you. Anyway, let's go to hook up the functions as I was saying, right? So we're gonna go onto this one. Let's start with this. So this was the create account. So we have created these functions in our game instance. We need to get hold of it. I told you it's really accessible. You can just type in get game instance. But there's one thing to be aware of. This is your default game instance. We've made a custom class of it. So we will need to do a little bit of casting to cast it to our custom one, the Playfab game instance that we made. And then if this is successful, it allows us to call functions on it. So create account was sign up, I think I called it. Bit confusing me using the word create account and sign up. Apologies for that. And then we can just take in the values that we had passed in from the UI. Okay, so it's as easy as that. All you got to do is just copy paste this. You could cache it in begin play or something if you want, but it's really low effort, so I'm not going to bother doing that. So we're just going to go ahead and get this again. Is the cast successful? If it is, we want to go ahead and call login, and we will just pass the information from the UI into this function. And then finally, for the forgot password, we can do the same thing, but we're just going to call forgot password and pass in the email instead. Easy peasy squeezy lemons. Okay, so we've hooked that up to our game instance. Our game instance now is going to be getting called, but it has no logic for us at the moment. So that's the next step, and this is where we need to be able to make a successful Playfab API call. So let's go back an hour and a half when Dan started making his UI. So we initially opened up the Playfab page. If you remember, we talked about creating an account. And if you go to your home page, you have this overview page. And I told you to copy and paste into a notepad file if you remembered to, or you can just follow the steps to get it again in order to get this ID. So the shooting gallery ID, I'm going to copy this because we need this for whenever we make an API call. So let's store this somewhere sensible. So let's just add a variable for it. We are going to store it as a string. And let's call this our, is it game ID or title ID? How do they describe it on that page? Just ID. Let's just call it game ID. Hello there, Brainerd Games as well. Nice to see you. Okay, so now that we've got this game ID, we probably don't need to expose it out to anything other than this, at the moment at least. And I'm just going to go ahead and compile it so I can give it a default value, and I'll whack in my code there. Remember, these codes, they're meant to be kept private. I'm going to delete these games afterwards, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that is our kind of unique game ID at least. So now whenever we make an API call and it needs that game ID, we're able to just drag this out and plug it in. So it makes it easy for you. If you want to come in and use this code for another project, all you need to do is come in and change your game ID, which is nice and easy. So what we're going to do, we're going to call something called set Playfab settings. So, oh, I can't believe it. I forgot one thing. Right at the start, I forgot it. And I apologize for that because I should have remembered to do that. So do you remember we installed the plugin, right? We went to this, we downloaded it, we installed it to our engine version. There's one final step you need to do as well, which I didn't do at the time. I apologize. So what you got to do is you got to enable the plugin. So you go to edit. Let's save everything because I think you might need to restart the editor after doing it. Let's go to plugins. Now we look for Playfab, and now we enable Playfab. With any plugin, you then need to restart. So we will restart it. But yeah, I should have said that at the start. It's no hassle to do now, but it's one of those things you should remember doing at the start. Otherwise you get to a point like I just did, where you try and do something and you wonder why you can't see what you were looking for. Snail, you're welcome to write questions down now if you want, and then we can try and answer them during the stream. I'm fine with that. All right, so we had our game ID, and what we want to do was to call a function called set Playfab settings. So what this is doing is whenever you make an API request, it will look at the Playfab settings, as far as I understand. And so if we set it now, it means that we don't need to feed this game ID into other calls. It can just read it from our Playfab settings here. So we're going to plug this into our game title ID. You probably would have like a secret API key to authenticate that it is actually you. This would stop you, other people, like you people in my chat right now, it'd stop you guys using that game ID alone in order to do stuff in my game, right? So you'd have a secret code that you wouldn't share with anyone. But we don't need to worry about that for now. So we've done a little bit of setup now. We don't need to worry about the game ID now for the rest of the content today. And the next steps now is we need to look at how we make these API calls. And I'll be honest with you, it's super duper easy. It's not much that we actually need to do. So shall we start with the register one? Let's do that. So register was our gray panel. Let's move these down. We might need a little bit more space. Okay, so for registration, it starts as simple as this. So because we've got the Playfab plugin enabled now, we have a bunch of Playfab functions that you can just call. So these aren't all Playfab themselves, but there's a lot of them that you'll see in a moment now when I drag off from this. So the one that you want to do for logging in, for no surprise, it's called log in with, and you can see all of the different options you have. Remember at the start of the stream, I told you here, I told you that there were so many different ways that you could log in rather than the email and signing up manually to Playfab like we're doing here. You can use Twitch, OAuth, Xbox, Steam. You got PlayStation Network. You can do an OpenID. You can do Nintendo stuff, Congregate, iOS, Google account, Facebook. You can do a custom ID, which isn't the most secure thing. That's just like you provide a random number, like ID yourself. If you have your own system for coming up with IDs, you might want to do that. But realistically, you'd either be doing what we're doing now is an email login, or you'd be using one of these other authentication systems. So Booksnell, your question was around, concern is how easy it is to fake high scores. Yeah, so what we'll be looking at tomorrow when we do the high scores is you can just send a high score from the client, but you're completely correct. If they have the means to do it, they could fake the high score. There's ways to kind of hack into memory and change the data in the specific point. So when you send the event, it'll give you an exaggerated score, right? If you do client authoritative, you're going to be like susceptible to those issues. But you can do certain server-side authentication as well here. So if you had the score updated as you went along, and then when it went to upload the high score, it was nowhere near where it should be, then you could kind of, before you submit that high score, you can verify it on the Playfab server. And what's cool about it is Playfab, it has like a scripting window where you do server-side code. So all you'd need to do is run from Unreal, you'd say like, try to submit a high score, and then you'd write a script on Playfab to kind of authenticate it a little bit. So there's still problems with it, but there is server-side code on this as well. Yes, there is. I could probably show you a little bit, but we'll be looking at it more tomorrow. Where is the window here? If I go into the shooting gallery game, there is, where is it actually? It's the scripts part of it. Is it in? Yes, in automation, cloud script, you can go ahead and add, actually it might be in a few places, the cloud script. I'm trying to remember. No, I think I was in the right place for it. So yeah, you're able to go ahead and write functions in here in order to define how you want things to handle. But I'll go through this properly tomorrow. Don't take this as an explanation. Just because I haven't gone in for a few weeks, so I forgot what things are. But okay, cool. Let's go back to it then. So we need to sign up, I said, right? So we just looked at how many, I think it's called, oh no, was I doing the login? Or was I, no, I was doing the sign up. Apologies. So we want to do register Playfab user. Yeah, I was even going down the wrong route, the wrong function. So register Playfab user. So in here, you can see that it comes under client. Sometimes you'll have some functions come up in both client and server. You should be aware of that. At the moment, we're working on client side. And so you typically want to be calling the client version of functions here. But if you were hosting a real like Unreal game with a server running the server side code, then you would obviously use the server side functions on that part of the logic. But okay, so when they sign up, we want to go ahead and register a Playfab user. And we need to, this request is something that we're going to kind of break out so that we can give it the data that it needs. So if we drag this out and we say we want to make one of these, it'll just give us a nice struct where we can fill in the information. So here we have username, email, password. We're just going to fill in the bits accordingly. So the display name, we'll use the username for that. There's also a username down here, so we'll connect it to both of them. There's then an email, and then there's a password down here. Okay. You can both require this. You can tick that so that if they didn't enter anything in one of them, it would fail the attempt. So this authentication of like the login success on Playfab, you can do your client side ones. If you remember this generic input field that we did earlier, you know, the text box, where we were able to set the label and the hint text and is it password. You could do some client-side logic here, like make sure the password is over 6 characters, make sure their username is over X amount of characters or whatever. So you are able to do that. You can make sure an email address has an @ You do that locally, but there are some checks as well that happen on the Playfab side automatically for you. Okay, so we've hooked these up. And then the way that this works is, if you think about it, what's going to happen at this point is it's going to make an API call across the internet via the wonderful wires. And it's going to say, here's some details. Someone wants to sign up. Can you tell me, was it successful or is there a problem? Maybe they've already got an account with that email, so it's going to fail, right? Maybe they didn't fill out a password, so it's going to fail. So we send off a request and we wait for a response. So what we need to do then is just to plug in what do we want to happen if it's successful and if it fails. So it's going to be pretty straightforward here. If it fails, we're just going to log stuff. So let's do that first. So let's drag off of this. We're going to create a new event here, add event, custom event. So on fail. And what it gives us is an error code. Well, this alone is a struct, right? So should we have a look what's in there? We can split that and it gives us all the information that's in there. So we can go ahead, if it fails, we can just go and print this information out. So is it append? I think it is. Yeah, you can do this. So let's just get a bunch of these. I may have done too many. So the error code is that. We might want to then do like a colon, space, and then we can put the error message in there, and then we might want to do a space with an open parenthesis and then put the error details in there and close the parenthesis. Oh, I did the right amount. Isn't that nice? And then we'll put a full stop because we're punctual people. Okay, so this means if there's an issue now, it will go ahead and it will print it out. You might want to actually hook this into your UI, right? So it comes up on the form that we were looking at earlier. It'll pop up and it'll say, oh, you didn't provide a long enough password. For today, for the sake of time, we're not going to hook all of that stuff up. But this is what would happen. We're going to just print it to the screen. We'll make it red so we notice it. And we'll make it stay on screen as well for 10 seconds. This is just for debugging. Okay, so first things first, we've done that. It's when I press compile, it's failing because we haven't hooked in the on success. So what do we want to do when it's successful? Well, for now, I guess we're just going to probably take them to that level that we made. Let's go back right at the start. Do you remember we have a Playfab login level, and then I made this extra level that we want to load into that had this giant sphere in it, right? So let's make that. Let's load to that level. So it's called post Playfab login. That's the name of the level. So we'll go back to where our logic was. We're going to go ahead and create an event on this. Oh, wrong. It's not create. It's add custom event. That one. Apologies. So this is going to be on register success. Let's just call it that. Okay, so you've got some information from this. You might want to use some information from this, but we're just loading the level. We don't really need to share this information at the moment, so we're probably just fine to just load the level. So let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna go load. I mean, to be honest, we can put a little delay in there so when they click it, it doesn't instantly disappear. But actually, no, it won't do anyway because we're waiting for a response. So that's fine. We don't need to delay at this point. So in here, we're just going to load level. Is it? Load level by object reference? No. No. What's it called? Oh, it's because I'm dragging off of that. Okay. My mistake. Open level. That's the one. Okay. So by object reference, and then we can choose our level in here. So our level was our post Playfab login. That's the one. Okay, cool. So that's what we want to do if we successfully sign up. We want them to be taken to the first level. All right, next up then, let's have a look at logging in. It's going to be quite similar. So we had a look at this accidentally earlier where I made a mistake. So we want to call sign up with, is it called, register. What was it called? We had it up on the screen earlier. Was it? Do you know what? I've just typed sign up and register and we're on login. I'm doing the same thing. I'm mixing it up again. That's my mistake. Okay, so login with. I thought it was easier than what I was making it look. You can log in with all the different things. We've done it so you sign up with an email address. So we're just going to click that. Oh, I'm going to double check actually. Was that the client version of it? Remember I mentioned earlier. Login with email address. Yeah, you can see this is under client. Great. Okay, so login with the email address. That's lovely. So when it fails, we can just do the same thing. It's the same fail event. It has the same parameter coming along. This isn't specific to registering. So we can actually use the thing I always do by mistake, which is create event. And we can just hook it into the one we've already made. So we don't have to write that out every time, which is quite nice. And then on success, we are probably just going to do the same thing really, aren't we? So let's do a custom. So let's call this on login success. And then what did we do up here? We just loaded the level. So we'll just go ahead and do the same thing, I think. There we go. So that's quite straightforward. And then finally, we got the forgot password one. So let's go ahead and sort this out. So this one, I don't think it's called forgot password. I think it's like a account recovery. Yeah, it's not that. So recovery. Yeah, send account recovery email. So this is an example of where you can see the different. This is from admin here. This is client and this is server. Right, so you've got to be aware which one you're selecting here. We're on a client requesting this. So if you try and do these ones, it'll basically say you don't have authority because it expects you to be on the server doing that. So let's go ahead and do this one. Similar thing, if it fails, we can just do our create event. Alrighty, and then if it's successful, what do we want to do? It'll send the email to them. Do we need to take them back to the login page? Is that what we would do? Or would we just... No, there's a button on the page that does that, isn't it? Yeah, so to be honest, we can just print something out. Let's go ahead and do... So, recovery, email success. And from this... For now, you might want to put something on the UI saying check your email. So let's just go print. Again, we'll make this. It's not an error, so we won't make it red. We'll make it green. We'll make it last for 10 seconds so we can notice it, and then we'll say recovery email has been sent. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so we have some issues. I haven't selected the function in here. That's number one. That was the only issue. All right, let's cover these up. And we've got our functions sorted. So this is our Playfab logic. We haven't done a ton. We've initialized giving our game ID that was on our GameFab page earlier, if you remember from here. We then went ahead and created 3 functions that are getting called from the UI. If you remember, in our UI screen, we have create account, we have login, and we have send password reset email. Each of those are hooked up to call our custom game instance that we made. And in here, we are going ahead and we are making these calls to the Playfab API. And when we call like register Playfab user, that's using this game title ID that we set in our settings earlier. That's why we did that. And the same with these other ones as well. I realized I forgot 2 things. We didn't pass in the data in for these, so let's go ahead and do that. So we want to go ahead and make one of these. We're going to just pass in the email and the password. Email goes in here, password goes in there. That that is all hunky-dory. And then we need to do the same thing here. We'll make one of these. Oh no, my UI is messing up. Not now. I'm so close to finishing it. Oh, it shows on my stream. I can look at it. Like on my screen, it's invisible. I feel like I need to show you. Oh, it shows up when I do a screen. I'm trying to do a screen grab and it shows back up. I feel like I'm being trolled by my computer right now. It's like no one believes me, but I'm telling you, it's invisible. Okay, I can just check on stream to see what do we want to do here. We want to make one of those. Lovely. All right. I can see it again, so that's all good. We can pass in the email thing. Yeah, I know, Steve. It's sad times. Okay. Cool. So let's go ahead and save. And we're probably at a point where we could test some of this as well, right? Because I think it's all set up. So yeah, let's test it. Let's test it. Let's try and register. Because at the moment, if you remember correctly, our poor game, Shooting Gallery, if we go to the player list, you have 0 players. How sad. Hello there, Heartbox1. Nice to see you. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining the Honest Jam as well. Okay, so we have no players. Let's test signing up, shall we? So we're going to go to here. We're going to go and press play. And we are going to try and sign up. Does my F11 work now? I'm a bit sad that it doesn't let me full screen for some reason. I've had a bunch of issues today. Yeah, it's mainly my interface stuff that's not working. All right, whatever. We'll go with it. Okay, so if we're creating a new account, we're going to go ahead and let's just type in what name should we go for? We'll just use Dan. My username is going to be Dan. Very original. So here I'm going to actually put in a genuine email because we need this to actually work. So let me just get my email window open so that I can show when the email comes through. Let me drag that to the side. We can go back to this overview. Wonderful. And let's go back into Unreal. Okay, so I'm going to just put in honestdangames@gmail.com. And then the password. For now, I'm just going to put in Dan. And we're going to see what happens. So we're going to press create account. Does it take us? No. Invalid input parameters. Password. Password must be between 6 and 100 characters. Okay, we're getting that because earlier we made this nice error log thing. Remember? So Playfab gives us the reasons it failed back. It tries doing it on the Playfab server, and then it sends a message back saying why it didn't succeed. So we've got all that information, and our password was too short. Okay, let's try again. So let's try writing. What's my password? Let's just make it Dan. Create account. Okay, email address not available. It already exists. Crikey. I didn't think about that because I think my account is signed up with this. All right, I'm going to have to use a separate email address again. All right. Okay, so it logged me in and it's taken me to the sphere level, if you remember, which is our next level that it does if it was successful. And if you want, you can go to the message log. Oh, it's output window. Sorry, I didn't have it open. But if you go over to developer and you go for output log, in here you should be able to go ahead and see information here about what was sent and all of that jazz. So you can see, like I put my password as Dan earlier, right? And my display name is that. Okay, so if we go ahead and press stop now, we can go to Playfab itself. So let's open up this. And if I now refresh this and search, I've got my first player, Dan. wow, we're going to make it big with this game. We've got a player. And you can, I'm going to just drag this off for just a moment because it does share, when you click on it, it shares information about where they logged in. And I don't particularly want to share where I live at the moment. But effectively, it gives you a page that's kind of like this. I won't show the full info, but you get an idea of it at least. So, and you can scroll down, you get even more information about it, but it gives you the information that they signed up with. And there's a few different things that you can do on this page then. For example, on this page, you can go ahead and you can look at their email address. You can go and change their password, or you can force them to reset their password if you want as well. Really, in a massive game, you're probably going to automate that, but it's nice that you do have this kind of admin panel where you can go ahead and do those sort of things. Okay, so we have now got ourselves able to sign up at least. There is a way that you can ban people actually, Books, now. We might have a look at that if we have time tomorrow. Okay, so let's see, do the other things work, right? Can you merge accounts? I do not know. I do not know. Let's go ahead, press play. Let's see how the other bits work. So we're going to go, instead of signing up now, we want to log in, right? So let's see if it logs in first. So my email, and that was my password. Let's press login. Success. I've gone in. Wonderful. Okay, let's try one more time. But instead of that, let's put in the wrong password. Here, invalid email or password. That was our error message coming back. So you could use this information coming back and you can present it to the UI so people know where they've gone wrong. And then the final thing, if we go to forgot password, because we did make a mistake, I can go here, I can put in my email address, press send password email. It says here a recovery email has been sent. So again, I'd recommend you display this on the UI realistically. We can go back to our login now. So if I go ahead and open my actual email, so I've got to go to my private email a sec just to show this. I can then hopefully, can I pop this out? Yes, I can. Okay, so they've given me this email. Shooting Gallery Account Recovery is the name of the game that I made earlier. That's where it says Shooting Gallery. And then you click on this link and it opens up for you a reset window like this. And I can now put my new password in. No prizes for guessing the password. And there we go. It's sorted. So now if I go ahead and type in my new password and press login, it's updated. I can log in. And you see how instant that is. And a lot of this back end kind of managing of accounts and email recovery and that is taken care for you, which is pretty nice. But the nice news now then is that because we've set that up, it basically means that we're in a position where we can start adding stuff to our players. So per player, you can set up data on the user. And as I said, you can use this for telemetry to kind of track how often they play in your game, or what level they've beaten, or how fast do they do at certain levels. What time of the day do they play? You could look at information on that as well. But what we're going to use it for is we're going to be able to store like a high score against the user. And then they can submit that to a leaderboard whenever they've finished a level or got a new high score as an example. Okay, so we're at that point where we're hoping to get by the end of the stream, which was we've made ourselves a UI and we've made API requests to sign up a user, to log in with that user, and also to recover your password if you forgot what the password was. So shall we have a little quick run through before we wrap up? And if you've got any questions, do feel free to write in chat. Again, if you want to know more about the Microsoft Game Stack, this is a sponsored stream by Microsoft Azure. You can find out more information on the link in chat right now. So any questions, do right away, but otherwise I'm going to do a quick overview of everything we've done today so we can wrap up the stream. So right at the beginning, let's go quick fire through everything we did. First step, we wanted to go to the marketplace. In the marketplace, you find yourself the Playfab plugin. So you would just search products, type in Playfab, you install it here, or you basically add it to cart. It's free, right? You'll need to download it. Once you've got that downloaded, you can then find it in your vault when you go to the library screen, and then you can install it to versions of the engine that you need it installed to. Once you've got it installed, you can start your project or load an existing project. And once you're in that project, you'll want to make sure that you go to your edit. Oh, my menu doesn't work here. Down to plugins. And then on this screen, you would look for Playfab and you would enable it. When you do that, you'll need to restart your editor. Nothing wrong with that. But then that means you have access to the Playfab functions in Blueprint that we've used. So what did we do then? We went ahead and we created two levels. We have this login level. We don't run around in here. It's just we use this as a way to show our level. If I show you the level blueprint, we just made this show our custom widget that we designed. And we'll go over that widget in a second now. We add it to the viewport and then we set it so that we can use the mouse on the screen. Now, that was one level that we made, and then we made a second level, which is where we want to be taken once we've successfully logged in to our Playfab account. So this was this level. I just added a sphere here so we know that we've loaded into the right level. But realistically, this could be your game then. All right, so as I said, on that first level, we added a UI widget to the screen. I said it was in the blueprint of this level. So let's go to the level blueprint. Let's go to this widget and let's have a look what it looks like. So how we set this up was we wanted a widget. We added a bunch of spacing in that. You can work on making it a lot better, I'm sure. But the main thing we've got in here is a widget switcher, which allows you to toggle between any of the included widgets. So we have a sign up widget, we have a login widget, and we have a forgot password widget. To make things easier, we made a reusable widget, which was called our generic input field. This was where we had our cells. If you imagine, this would be a little like, this is how it looks on the screen. You have text on the left saying username, and then you have an input field on the right where you can write things in. So it's called a text on the left, and it'll be a text box is the name of the widgets you're using. We created one of those. We did a bit of logic so you can set labels. You can set the hint text and you can say whether or not it should be masked, such as a password field. So if we go back, we have a look, we can click on individual when we've used these widgets. So let's go into this sign up widget. If I click onto this field now, I have these members over here where I can change the details of this particular input field. You'll see on the password one, I've ticked that so that it masks it. So I created a bunch of these, created buttons, and what I did on each one of those buttons is I bound to their click events. If I click on the button, you'll see on clicked, and I did the same for that button. And what we did in the graph for that, so that we can reuse this widget in different places, we didn't want to define the logic here. Instead, we made it do a event dispatcher. So we make an event that we dispatch from here, and wherever we add this widget, it can hook into that event and tell it what to do when that event is fired. So we have done that for this widget. We have it whenever we click to change what widget we're on, and whenever we click the action button. In this case, it's to the create account. We have the same thing for login, and we have the same thing for our forgot password one. So when we added all of these to our widget container, our widget switcher, sorry, that meant that we can now access those event dispatchers that I talked about on create account, on switch to login, these. So these we've then gone ahead and implemented. So in the one containing widget that has all of the sub widgets in it, the main one that gets put onto the screen, that's where we've done most of our logic. If we go into the graph of this, we'll be able to see that we've done logic which effectively changes the widget switcher to show different widgets if they click to change from login to sign up, etc. And they've also done, we've also implemented, the logic here. So if they press the sign up, we go ahead and do the Playfab logic. Now, we didn't implement the Playfab logic ourselves within the UI. If you remember, we thought of it in a way where we want, so when someone signs into Playfab, or if we want to call any Playfab functions, realistically, we want to do this somewhere that's accessible and somewhere that's always going to be available because it has a lifetime throughout the whole game. There are different ways to do it, but we decided to do it in the game instance. So we end up getting hold of our game instance. We made a custom one called Playfab game instance, and then we made functions inside of it. So I've just jumped to that Playfab instance, but we made it as a separate file here, our Playfab instance. We went into our project settings so that we can go ahead and we can set it in our mode. We can set our custom game instance. Within the game instance then, this is where we hooked in those 3 events that we were calling from our UI. Each one of them then goes ahead and calls a specific Playfab function, and this is what we get from using that Playfab SDK plugin that we downloaded. Instead of us having to manually do web requests to a web API, it's handling it all in one simple function call for us. And how these work, you pass in the data that you want to send, and then you define what it should do if it's successful or if it's a failed attempt. Playfab sends you information back if it's a failure, and I've just logged this to the screen so we can see what goes wrong. You'd probably want to add it to your UI realistically. So we did that for our sign up, for our login, calling login with email address. You can log in with multiple different authentication forms as well, like we saw, such as Steam, such as Xbox, such as iOS and Android. And then finally, we did a forgot password button, which sent an email recovery link to the registered email address. So the final thing that we did in here was right at the start, when our game instance is initialized, which is right when you launch the game, we go ahead and set our game ID. And that game ID, if you recall, was what you get from your Playfab page, where you have your game, you have this ID here. You just copy that in. And what that allowed us to do was to go ahead and have a game where when we press play on the main screen, we are displayed with this login window. We can register, and that'll take us to the next level. Or if you've already got an account, you can log in, and I'll just do it one more time to show. If I did it wrong, it doesn't take me to the next. I get some feedback saying the password, well, it wasn't long enough. I don't even know if it wasn't right, but I can just jargon it and press login. This time it says it was an invalid email or password, but if I put the correct one in and log in, this will then take me to the level where I can start doing my gameplay. And now we know they've got a Playfab user ID. Now we've got that kind of connection so that we can send information using their player ID to say this player has now completed this level, or this player has got this high score. And we can then send that information, so we can store that information on Playfab and do whatever we want to do with it. Whether you're trying to incentivize players to keep playing, or whether you're trying to analyze and understand your player base. So yeah, that's what we did today. It's been quite a long stream. The UI does take a while to set up in Unreal Engine, but hopefully it's a good starting point, and you can carry on and explore the different things that you can do in Playfab. But if you want to tune into the next stream, we're going to look at an example of how we could use this setup in order to use a high score that a player achieves in our Unreal Engine game, and that we can send that to Playfab and have it added to a leaderboard. And then we can see that leaderboard in our Unreal Engine game as well. So it's going to be great for games where you want to see how players compete against each other, or in game jams, for example. It might incentivize more people to play, or to play your game again. Because if they know other people have done better than them, that probably is going to push them to want to play again and do a little bit better. But yeah, I'll have a look at chat now for any questions. But if you've got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But I've only been working with this for not too long now, probably the last month I started looking at it. So there's plenty of things I don't know about it still, but there's quite a lot of good resources out there on Playfab that you can look up some things and find out yourself. Okay, so let's check the chat for some of the questions we had. Heartbox1, thank you for that message. I'm glad you found a team for the Honest Game Jam that's coming up. Glad to hear. 100 characters is a lot for a password, but hey, you can't say it's not secure. About the merging account, so partly you're asking if someone signs in with their Twitch token, but then revokes access to that Twitch token, could they then sign up with another account and then they be merged? I'm not 100%. There's probably means to do it, but I don't know. I can't say yes or no. I'd hope so, that there's some kind of admin side. Maybe you'd need to send an email and it'd be a manual merge, you know. That's the most likely thing. We had another one from thank you, Roy, for the subscription and the kind comments. So that, yeah, Booksnell then asked, for game jams, I don't want users to have to deal with login or passwords. I see there are anonymous authentication that is based on the device being used. Can you submit scores with the same name from different anonymous authentication device? For trolls, can you delete high scores using Playfab manager page? Okay, good points. I agree. In a game jam, realistically, if you're presenting them with a login, like they've got to sign in, some people might not even play your game jam game. So you've got to weigh up whether you want them to really make an account. But if you can use the anonymous authentication, that could be a reduce that barrier. So yeah, you are right. That is definitely something that should be considered. For the bigger games, as I said, you'd likely suggest that people can sign in with something like Google that they already have an account for, because that's a lot less fuss as well, or Steam or whatever platform you're launching your game on. As for submitting your games with the same name from a different anonymous authentication device, I'm pretty sure you could use the same name. I don't think the username is unique. I think the email is unique as far as I understand, but that's something I'd need to check for you. I'd imagine with the anonymous authentication devices, that would just use your device kind of ID as a key field, and so you wouldn't have to provide a username in that case. So I can't imagine that it verifies that the usernames are different. So you could put in a different username. That's the kind of hit you take for using anonymous. The last part of it then was, for trolls, can you delete high scores using Playfab manager page? Yes, you can. And we'll have a look how to do that tomorrow. You can do things like banning users as well, if I remember correctly, from the control panel. So yeah, hopefully if tomorrow goes well, we'll get to explore some of those things. Maybe not the banning, because I'm my only player of my game. If I ban myself, then I've got no players, so we better not do that. High scores always associated with unique users was a... okay, so I guess that ties into the last question. Yeah, I think you'd be able to... we'll have to explore it tomorrow. I can't remember off the top of my head whether you can set it so the same person can have like 10 high scores on your table, or whether it's just per player it shows the highest. We'll have to have a look around. Play fabulous as well. Thank you, Rubik's Cubed. I appreciate it. Thank you for the subscription as well. So Booksnail saying, great stuff. Thanks for the stream. After looking at the API and seeing the Playfab manager, I am less intimidated now. Well, that's nice to hear, Booksnail. Thank you for your comments. It's one of those things where I knew Playfab existed, but it felt like this mysterious word that I didn't really know what it was. I was like, is it a service? Is it a... I didn't quite know. It's like, it does, you can do multiplayer servers. So I was like, oh, so what did it... But in fact, it's just, if you think of it as just a back-end frame solution for all kind of things you'd want to do on a back end of a game. They have like scalable servers and things like that you can do, along with this kind of user management kind of side of things that we've been talking about today. Artifacts, you've been lurking, no questions, but thank you for the tutorial. You're welcome, Artifacts. Thank you for being here. Heartbox1, I'm looking forward to the jam. My team seem like nice people. Well, that's nice to hear. I'm glad you found someone to take part in the jam with. And yeah, if anyone is interested in joining the charity game jam that I'm hosting, there's a link in chat there for you to sign up if you want. I think we're almost at 70 people signed up at the moment. Yeah, partly you're right. People, in a game jam, sometimes they won't even download a game, yet alone log into a game. So if you can minimize that barrier, yeah, maybe that's something we can have a look at tomorrow, is try and do the anonymous authentication. Well, if I have time to look it up before tomorrow's stream, that would be worthwhile. Or maybe we'll do it in the Honest Jam. I'll try and set it up that way. That could be an idea. Create Steve, you said you were working on an Unreal scene earlier. If you've got a screenshot of it, you're welcome to share it. We'll have a look before we raid someone. I wonder if there's an API for itch.io to get the login details of a player when using HTML5. Well, the thing is, it's embedded, isn't it? So you embed a web player, and so I don't know whether that web player can interface with the web page that it's embedded in. It'd be interesting if so, but I've used scoreboard stuff, like a free scoreboard thing before, and I knew that didn't work if you were playing it in a browser, for example. But yeah, okay. Well, bro, thank you everyone for your attention, your questions, and generosity in stream tonight. It's been nice to share your company. I'm gonna rest my voice because my throat is starting to feel it, and we got to do another couple hours tomorrow now. So I'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. I might start a little earlier again, just to work on that mini game I was making. I didn't show you the mini game I was making earlier. So we were just making a little example level here. My screen has gone pitch black. I'm having that glitch again. A little example level where the idea is you would start off, you'd come up to this like shooting wall. You're not meant to be able to jump over it. You can at the moment. We'll fix that. And then there'll be like shooting targets that spawn. And then you need to shoot those. And then you'll get a high score, and then we'll submit that high score to the leaderboard. So yeah, I mean, if I could package that game and let people play it by the end of the stream, that would be super fun. But we'll have to see how time goes. We all know how Unreal and packaging games can not always be the most smooth process if you've not been trying to package along the way. Okay. So let's go and find someone to raid, shall we?